You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV from Toronto, Ontario. I'm Samia Sayed. Welcome to the show. Now coming up, we have an interview with the Canadian Multifaith Federation for their 50th anniversary. But first, the headlines. Ottawa-based journalist wants to be reunited with Afghan family. New survey reveals Canadian opinion on religions. Ottawa First Nations and Muslim Women's Association uplift one another. Mosque damaged in Mariupol, Ukraine. And now the details. Ottawa-based Afghan journalist Habib Zahori says to local media sources that the government's treatment of Ukrainian refugees compared to those from Afghanistan is hypocritical and an example of prejudice. Zahori wants to bring his siblings, all of whom were either journalists or worked for Western journalists in Afghanistan, to Canada under a special humanitarian program. But because they fled to the Netherlands since the Taliban's takeover in August, they do not qualify. By contrast, many visa requirements have been waived for Ukrainian refugees. A new Angus Reid survey reveals that the number of Canadians who believe in God is only 1/3 of the population. The spiritually uncertain are nearly half of Canadians at 46%. The pandemic seems to have accelerated a decline, with many churches losing 20% of their attendees. The survey also showed that many Canadians find Catholicism, Evangelical Christianity, and Islam to be more harmful to society than beneficial. CEO of Action for Humanity and the former spokesperson for the Muslim Association of Canada, Rania Lawendi, says that negative perceptions of Muslims are due to their misrepresentations in the media. Algonquin elder Claudette Commanda and the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization unite over shared experiences of racism and hatred in Canada. Commanda addressed members of the women's organization in an online event titled Understanding First Nations Culture. She remembered how the Muslim Association stood in solidarity with Ottawa First Nations when hundreds of mass grave sites were discovered across Canada last year. The women's organization founder, Nazira Naz Tareen, tells local media sources that these events help build bridges of understanding and connections with one another. She says that this is needed during a time of reconciliation. Russian attacks in the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol today left a courtyard of a mosque partly destroyed. The mosque was built in 2005 in memory of the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and his wife Hurrem Sultan. When the war started, Turkey conducted intense diplomatic traffic with Russia and Ukraine to evacuate the civilians who took shelter in the mosque. On Tuesday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a 4-day Orthodox Easter humanitarian pause beginning on Holy Thursday and running through Easter Sunday, April 24th, to allow for the opening of a series of humanitarian corridors. That's it for the news. On our show today, we have some extraordinary guests from the Canadian Multifaith Federation, otherwise known as CMF, who are here to celebrate their 50th anniversary. Our first guest is Imam Abdul Patel, the founder of the Canadian Council of Imams. He has been serving his community for decades as a religious leader. Welcome, Imam Patel. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Assalamu alaikum to all the viewers. Good afternoon.
We are also being joined today by Pandit Roopnauth Sharma, the founder of Mississauga's Ram Mandir. Pandit Sharma has served thousands in the Peel region regarding spiritual and social matters. Welcome, Pandit Sharma. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today.
Well, namaste and good to be with you. Looking forward to the program.
Imam Patel, can you start us off by telling us a little bit about the Canadian Multifaith Federation?
Yes, thank you for your question. Canadian Multifaith Federation, formerly known as Ontario Multifaith Council, and before that was even the Organization for Spiritual and Religious Care, was the oldest multifaith body in the country. It started in 1972 by Christian denominations, Reverend Morris Flint, and a number of other Christian denominations. They approached the government on the need for spiritual and religious care in government institutions. And it continued as a more or less body with mostly Christian representatives. But as in the late 70s and 80s, the demography of population and faith and culture in Canada started to change. So it started in a inviting the other faith, minority faith, I would say, the Jewish, Muslim, and other faith leaders, Hindu, to come on board, and became adopted a new name later on, Ontario Multifaith Council. And it was until 1992 in the NDP government that officially the government recognized the body as the leading body for spiritual and religious care by signing a memorandum of agreement with 4 ministries: Ministry of Health, Correction Services, Social Services, and that one. And that was provided funding for the organization.
And that's quite the overview of almost 50 years right there. Pandit Sharma, can you tell us a little bit about the events that CMF holds?
Well, CMF is identified a multi-faith organization. We do not celebrate events. We are actually more of proactive in dealing with the needs of people in institutions, federal and otherwise, and municipal and provincial, whereby there's a need for spiritual and religious care. We are very committed to giving that service at all levels, and currently we are engaged in celebrating, and I said we are not celebrating, but recognizing spiritual and religious care activities across the country, that we have a spiritual and religious care week that we celebrate. We are also engaged in dealing with current issues like guns, gangs, and violence, dealing with issues that brings the community together, dealing with issues that relates to how do we continue to get the voice of religion into the boardrooms of the government and all necessary institutions where our voice needs to be heard. So we are very engaged in those things constantly.
And that's certainly quite a task that faces you. We are here celebrating CMF's 50th anniversary. Imam Patel, what would you say is CMF's greatest achievement over these 50 years?
Well, one is the biggest achievement I can see is the recognition by the government and employers, that is federal and provincial and municipal governments, as well as employers, as the authoritative body on religious matters. Whenever they have a question on any religion from any employees or anything required to accommodate the needs as per human rights code, they approach the CMF, formerly Ontario Multifaith Council, and we have played a leading role in providing authoritative information from our board members. Our board consists of mainstream faith, main organization of each faith. So that way we get the authoritative information from each one. At the same time, we are also doing the crisis intervention for faith accommodation and for inmates in the jails, for patients in the hospitals, establishing prayer space or sacred space, as is known with in workplaces and hospitals and so on, institutions. So
and that's quite a record that CMF has achieved so far in terms of things they've already done. What are some objectives, now that the 50th anniversary is here, that CMF is writing down for the next few years?
I think I can answer that. We are definitely looking at becoming a national organization. It was started as OMC, Ontario focus, but making it a national organization and getting national involvement to address the current issues that we have at the widest scope level. And I think being able to survive as an entity without government funding, it being one of our greater achievements also, and also to continue to find ways to support ourselves financially and to continue to be a key resource, all institutions, all communities to connect with when they have a question relating to faith and religion and culture.
Now, I'd like to shift to asking about some of the services that CMF provides. I saw that there is a multi-faith competency screening certification. What does the certificate include?
When someone is looking for employment in, let's say, one of the Toronto homes, the requirements by the Toronto homes is that we provide them with a spiritual and religious care coordinator. That is, this person will coordinate the needs, spiritual and religious care needs of the residents of these homes. They may be dedicated to a particular faith or ordained by a particular faith, but we ensure that they have competency to understand the needs of other faith groups. So our screening is intended to bring them to that stage where they can be confirmed that they have that competency.
And that's quite a vital service, because we do see that there is some need for that sort of recognition. And so it's great to see a formal recognition of this. Now, I also noticed that CMF sells a multi-faith information manual. Can you tell us a little bit about this manual?
But Abdul, can you address that?
Yeah, we have compiled this manual, and now we have a 6th edition. We also have a 5th edition in French available for anyone to have French as well. It has been in great demand by school boards, hospitals, and correctional facilities for people to know on how to deal with various faith communities, when at the same time accommodate them as per human rights code when needed. So that answers a lot of questions on what are some of the requirements, dietary requirements, worship requirements, and also in event of any death and dying requirements. So that manual is getting bigger and bigger, adding more. We have over 40 faiths in there. I think that in the manual that is really useful tools.
And I also noticed that CMF holds an annual Spiritual and Religion Care Awareness Week. Has this been going on for many years?
Yes, it has been for a number of years, and now it is nationwide, really. Many provinces recognize that October month, the spiritual and religious care, but also with that celebration or with awareness creation, CMF has been holding annual conference for chaplains educational conference. And that has been going on for a number of years, ever since I have been involved. I've been involved since 1990. You mentioned Canadian Council of Imam. We became member in 1990 as official member of the formerly Ontario Multifaith Council.
And I noticed that each conference is coupled with a theme. How is this theme determined every year?
I think one of the things I want to share with you is that you mentioned books and themes. We are currently working on another book on the burial ceremonies or death ceremonies relevant to all religions, something that's very important. But how do we come up with the themes or events? It is something that we seek out our input from our community leaders and also current events. And based upon current events and the input, for instance, we are pushing an event called Guns, Gangs, and Violence, which we did once. And because of the recent situations in Ontario, we thought that would be something that we need to address now. So the theme was created because of the reality of the day. But the theme could be created because of a need that we envision and is not being addressed. So those are some of the approaches we take to define a theme.
And this year's October conference will be on moral injury.
And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. We've just barely scratched the surface on the work CMF has done. But we were able to celebrate the 50 years and hopefully many more in the future. So thank you so much, Imam Patel and Pandit Sharma, for joining us today for CMF.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to all of you.
You are watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. That's it from our Toronto studios tonight. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more Canadian Muslim content. Stay safe, and until next time.